two makers in there. Okay, so we're done with Job's primary. All right. Okay, let's gather for Bible class, please.
Come here, Isaiah.
Come on, Evelyn. It's time for Bible class.
You went to take out Kylo.
He's like, I'm sleepy.
Why?
Because Kylo was whining, so
Yeah, he was pregnant.
he should be out for a while.
Yeah, he can be out.
So she's starting food. So
All right, let's start. Okay, so last time,
What chapter are we in?
chapter 32. Last time we finished Job's final answer and his summary argument and his final defense
We get to meet Elihu.
to his friends. And we're going to see a very brief rebuke of the friends, but a very extensive rebuke of Job. And this will go on for some chapters. We certainly won't finish it today. And then, after Elihu speaks, finally, for the first time, God himself speaks directly to Job. Okay. Chapter 32. So these three men ceased to answer Job because he was righteous in his own eyes. They said, well, we give up. Then Elihu, the son of Barachel, the Buzite of the family of Ram, burned with anger. So don't you get the idea from this passage that Job and the three friends are not the only ones there, that there were witnesses to this exchange? That this was actually, to a degree, a public event. And we know there's at least Elihu here. Probably others. He burned with anger at Job because he justified himself rather than God. He burned with anger also at Job's three friends because they found no answer, although they had declared Job to be in the wrong. Now, put those two passages side by side, and it seems really strange, right? Job's angry, or Elihu is angry at Job because Job is justifying himself rather than God. And so your first conclusion would be, well, Elihu must agree with the three friends. No. He's angry with the three friends also because they continued to accuse Job of sin. Continued to declare him to be in the wrong. So he's angry at Job for saying, for justifying himself rather than God is the key. But he's angry at the three friends for not justifying Job at all, for continuing to accuse him of wickedness. So the point being, and I mentioned this last Sunday, Job has not a word as he reaches the end of his defense that God is the righteous one in all that is happening here. That Job is right to maintain his righteousness, but you do not see him there finally at the end declaring God's righteousness, when in fact the only righteousness Job has is God's righteousness. Now at the beginning, Job declared God's righteousness in all these things. All right. Now Elihu had waited to speak to Job because these other men were older than he was. And when Elihu saw that there was no more answer in the mouth of these three men, he burned with anger. And Elihu, son of Barachel the Buzite, answered and said, I am young in years, and you are aged. Therefore I was timid and afraid to declare my opinion to you. I said, let days speak, and let many years teach wisdom. But it is the spirit in man, the breath of the Almighty, that makes him understand. In other words, it's not being old that makes you wise. Wisdom comes alone from God. You can be old and a fool. You can be wise and young. But the wisdom is always of God. It is not the old who are wise, nor the aged who understand what is right. Therefore I say, listen to me. Let me also declare my opinion. Behold, I waited for your words. I listened for your wise sayings while you searched out what to say. I gave you my attention. And behold, there was none among you who refuted Job or who answered his words. So you can almost, it's almost if somebody is first reading the book of Job, I suggest that they read chapter 32 first. And maybe check, and maybe Elihu's entire defense first, and then go back and read Job from the beginning again. So that you could see how this happens. Job's maintaining his righteousness, maintaining God's righteous decree. He is bearing witness to the fact that often the guilty prosper and the just suffer. And they have no response. They have no answer to him. They just continue to rehash their same argument over and over again, just becoming harsher and harsher as time goes on, but essentially not changing a word of it, ignoring what Job actually said and just bullheadedly proceeding forward. Beware lest you say, we have found wisdom. May God vanquish him, not a man. He has not directed his words against me, and I will not answer him with your speeches. They are dismayed. They answer no more. They have not a word to say. And I shall wait, because they do not speak, because they stand there and answer no more. So he's saying, so am I just going to keep here waiting and holding my tongue when I have found absolutely no wisdom in what you have said so far, and I'm just going to sit here and wait for you to figure out, to find wisdom now that you're finally silent? I will also answer my share. I will also declare my opinion, for I am full of words. The spirit within me constrains me. Behold, my belly is like wine that has no vent. In a wine bottle, when it's fermenting, you have to vent it, because otherwise the bottle bursts. And so that's what he's saying. It's like he's ready to burst with trying to speak, because he's so frustrated with what he's been hearing. I must speak that I may find relief. I must open my lips and answer. I will not show partiality to any man or use flattery toward any person, for I do not know how to flatter, or else my Maker would soon take me away. So, there's his rebuke of the friends. Now he turns to Job.
So do we have any clue when Elihu shows up, though? Because he talks about
As far as we can
listening to him, listening to that fight.
We're not told anything but that he's there.
Okay.
So we would assume he's there the whole time.
Oh.
The whole time. So, in other words, there was an audience to this argument. But now, hear my speech, O Job, and listen to all my words. Behold, I open my mouth, the tongue in my mouth speaks. My words declare the uprightness of my heart, and what my lips know, they speak sincerely. The Spirit of God has made me, and the breath of the Almighty gives me life. Answer me if you can. Set your words in order before me. Take your stand. Behold, I am toward God as you are. I too was pinched off from a piece of clay. I am but a man, in other words. Behold, no fear of me need terrify you. My pressure will not be heavy upon you. Surely you have spoken in my ears, and I have heard the sound of your words. You say, I am pure without transgression. I am clean, and there is no iniquity in me. Behold, he finds occasion against me. He counts me as his enemy. He puts my feet in the stocks and watches all my paths. Behold, in this you are not right. I will answer you, for God is greater than man. Why do you contend against him, saying, he will answer none of man's words? For God speaks in one way, and in two, though man does not perceive it. In a dream, in a vision of the night, when deep sleep falls on men, while they slumber on their beds, then he opens the ears of men and terrifies them with warnings that they may turn aside from his deed and conceal pride from a man. He keeps back his soul from the pit, his life from perishing by the sword. So, you say God has not spoken to me. God does not speak as men speak. You shouldn't expect to hear a voice from heaven for him to give you an answer. But that doesn't mean he has no answer to give. In this case, the first example he gives is God sends dreams, not prophetic dreams, but dreams about man's own sin as a warning. And I think anybody who's lived long enough will tell you that that's accurate. That God uses our dreams to warn us about our evil all the time. Man is also rebuked with pain on his bed, and with continual strife in his bones, so that his life loathes bread, and his appetite the choicest food. His flesh is so wasted away that it cannot be seen, and his bones that were not seen stick out. So God sends sickness, and this too is God's voice. His soul draws near the pit, and his life to those who bring death. If there be for him an angel, a mediator, one of the 1,000 to declare to man what is right for him, and he is merciful to him and says, deliver him from going down into the pit, I have found a ransom. Let his flesh become fresh with youth. Let him return to the days of his youthful vigor. Then man prays to God, and he accepts him. He sees his face with a shout of joy, and he restores to man his righteousness. He sings before men and says, I sinned and perverted what was right, and it was not repaid to me. He has redeemed my soul from going down into the pit, and my life shall look upon the light. God uses sickness and to rebuke a man, so that a man will turn from it and recognize that even in his being restored to health, he was not punished truly for anything he had done. The sickness that God sends is not the punishment for sin. Read carefully what it says here. It's the warning to repent, because the true punishment is going down into the pit. And in Elihu's example, but God redeemed me from that. I did not receive what I deserved. And so there is no penitence in suffering. Suffering doesn't pay for sin. Our sufferings, our troubles, our trials are never payment to God for what we have done, but rather they are chastening, warnings, discipline, like the discipline that a good parent will make of an erring child so that they will learn. Like the sins of our children, what would a parent have to do to truly punish the sins of their children? They'd have to kill them. If it was to pay for sin, if that's the real punishment, right? Right, we know that. That's not the purpose of punishing a child, to make them pay for their sins. The purpose of punishment is to show them, to discipline them, to teach them to do right, to be repentant, to fear wrong, to teach them the fear of God, to teach them the fear of the true punishment that comes upon us after death. All right, and so God deals with us in the same way. If he were to immediately punish us for our sins, we'd be dead. We'd go down into the pit. But he doesn't. He's merciful. We often don't see that mercy, particularly when we're in the middle of the discipline, just like the child doesn't feel the mercy when the things they love are taken away or they're spanked. But it is mercy when it's done in love. All right. Behold, God does all these things twice, 3 times with a man, to bring back his soul from the pit, that he may be lighted with the light of life. Pay attention, O Job, listen to me. Be silent and I will speak. If you have my words, answer me. Speak, for I desire to justify you. If not, listen to me. Be silent and I will teach you wisdom. Very different goal Elihu has in mind when he's speaking to Job. His friends are only saying, you're a sinner, Job, repent. And Elihu says, I am speaking so that you will be justified, so that you will be righteous, declared righteous. Then Elihu answered and said, chapter 34, hear my words, you wise men. So he's speaking to all. And give ear to me, you who know. For For the ear tests words like the palate, mouth, tastes food. Let us choose what is right. Let us know among ourselves what is good. For Job has said, I am in the right, and God has taken away my right. In spite of my right, I am counted a liar. My wound is incurable, though I am without transgression. What man is like Job, who drinks up scoffing like water, who travels in company with evildoers and walks with wicked men? In other words, can you point to anyone else that has endured what Job is enduring? And it's because that you know the life that they live. They travel with evildoers. They walk with wicked men. They're scoundrels. Do you see any of those men being like Job here now? For he has said, it profits a man nothing that he should take delight in God. Okay. And you can see the just criticism of Job for making this claim. So Job begins not despising the chastening of the Lord, and he ends saying that what you're bringing, you're treating me like an enemy. And so Elihu's opening thing here is, if God was treating you like an enemy, you'd be dead, and you'd be in hell, because that's where his enemies go. All right. Therefore, hear me, you men of understanding. Far be it from God that he should do wickedness, and from the Almighty that he should do wrong. For according to the work of a man, he will repay him, and according to his ways, he will make it befall him. Of a truth, God will not do wickedly, and the Almighty will not pervert justice. Who gave him charge over the earth? Who laid on him the whole world? And so, when it comes to judging what God has done and saying, you are unjust for doing this to me, because that's Job's complaint to God by the end. God, you're not being just. You're treating me like I'm a wicked man when I'm righteous. That would be perverting justice. If a judge looks upon an innocent man and declares he's guilty and has him put to death, that's a perversion of justice, right? Right. So, all right, but God does not do this. God does not do wicked. From Job's perspective, it sure seems like God is being wicked toward him. But there is no wickedness in God. Who gave him charge over the earth? Who laid on him the whole world? So in other words, it's saying, which of you put God in charge? Which of you made him the God of the earth? Well, it's a sarcastic question, of course, because he's saying, none of you are over God, that you are going to place yourself as judge over him. Not Job, not the friends. If he should set his heart to it and gather to himself his spirit and his breath, all flesh would perish together and man would return to dust. But as Paul say, in him we live and move and have our being. If God would withdraw his presence from us, from the earth, even from the evil, we'd all cease to exist. All would be dust. All life would cease. So there's the answer to those who try to treat God as if he's not active in the world. His breath continues to give life to everything that we have. All life itself. If you have understanding, hear this. Listen to what I say. Shall one who hates justice govern? Will you condemn him who is righteous and mighty? Who says to a king, worthless one, and to nobles, wicked man? Who shows no partiality to princes, nor regards the rich more than the poor? For they are all the work of his hands. In a moment they die. At midnight the people are shaken and pass away, and the mighty are taken away by no human hand. All right. So the one who is righteous and mighty is God. He is over all. He is the one who says to the king, you're worthless. I don't care what position you have before man. I don't care if you're a nobleman. You're still a wicked man. So you're a prince. That's nice. You have more money. That's great. Doesn't change God's judgment of the person at all. And in death, they're all equal. For his eyes are on the ways of a man, and he sees all his steps. There is no gloom or deep darkness where evildoers may hide themselves. For God has no need to consider a man further that he should go before God in judgment. So in other words, when God judges, there is no opportunity for you to come before God and make your case as if he does not know what's happened yet and he's trying to figure it out. That's not the kind of judge that God is. Human judges, yeah, that's what we do. In Job's day, the ones that sit down in the gate of the city where the cases are heard and he hears all the evidence and he tries to determine the truth, that's not how God judges. There is no courtroom in that sense. Or a hearing. There's no hearing. There's simply the judgment because he already sees and knows everything, even the hearts of man. So he doesn't have need to consider man further to determine what judgment he's going to make. He shatters the mighty without investigation and sets others in their place. And so he simply does these things, and man always wants to contend with God and argue with God. And as if there's anything that we could possibly answer him or change his mind or what he does not know. We always try to bring, to deal with God as if he were a sinner, as if he were imperfect, as if he lacked understanding or knowledge. All right. Thus, knowing their works, he overturns them in the night, and they are crushed. He strikes them for their wickedness in a place for all to see, because they turned aside from following him and had no regard for any of his ways. So that they caused the cry of the poor to come to him, and he heard the cry of the afflicted. When he is quiet, so in other words, he doesn't seem to be acting yet. He's not doing anything about what's happening as far as we can see. We're not hearing some pronouncement from heaven against the wicked. When he is quiet, who can condemn him? When he hides his face, who can behold him? Whether it be a nation or a man. That a godless man should not reign, that he should not ensnare the people. All right. For has anyone said to God, I have borne punishment, I will not offend any more. Teach me what I do not see. If I have done iniquity, I will do it no more. Will he then make repayment to suit you because you reject it? So, if anyone were to say to God, all right, you've punished me, I repent, I'm sorry, I won't do it anymore, I'll be good. Is God then, so will he then make repayment to suit you because you reject it? For you must choose and not I. Therefore declare what you know. I'm trying to make sense of that. Will he make repayment to suit you, who the he and who the you is, because you reject it?
What verse?
Verse 33.
Well, in this it says,
The you.
should it...
Well, man, I think the.
He's talking about man talking to God.
I'm thinking the he is the man and the you is God. Would be my guess. For you must choose and not I. Therefore declare what you know.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. So God. Yeah. All right. So when it comes to dealing with God, we simply hear what he declares. He already knows, and he must make his judgment. Men of understanding will say to me, and the wise man who hears me will say, Job speaks without knowledge, his words are without insight. Would that Job were tried to the end, because he answers like wicked men. For he adds rebellion to his sin. He claps his hands among us and multiplies his words against God. And so, that whole 3 verses there is Elihu quoting Job's friends, basically. I wish Job would speak with knowledge and insight, because he hasn't been. He's answering like a wicked man. He's just rebelling. And Elihu answered and said, do you think this to be just? Do you say, "It is my right before God that you ask, what advantage have I? How am I better off than if I had sinned? I will answer you and your friends with you." So first he quotes Job's friends. Now in the first few verses of chapter 35, he quotes Job. He says, "I'm no better off now than if I had actually sinned. Because either way, I'm miserable. I will answer you and your friends with you." So he's got those two statements. The first, that Job is a wicked man. The second, "I'm no better than a wicked man," is Job's response. "Look at the heavens and see, and behold the clouds which are higher than you. If you have sinned, what do you accomplish against him? And if your transgressions are multiplied, what do you do to him? Do your sins change God? Do they have an effect upon God himself? Do they change who he is? Do they hurt him? If you are righteous, what do you give to him?" Flip the story. So now if you're righteous, what does your righteousness add to God? Or what does he receive from your hand if you are righteous and good? Your wickedness concerns a man like yourself, and your righteousness a son of man. Because of the multitude of oppressions, people cry out. They call for help because of the arm of the mighty. In this case would be the arm of those who are mighty against them. But none says, "Where is God my maker, who gives songs in the night, who teaches us more than the beasts of the earth and makes us wiser than the birds of the heavens?" There they cry out, but he does not answer because of the pride of evil men. Surely God does not hear an empty cry, nor does the Almighty regard it. How much less when you say you do not see him, that the case is before him and you are waiting for him. In other words, you're treating this like you've just made your case to God himself, and he's not being just, he's not answering you. He's treating you as an enemy. And now because his anger does not punish, and he does not make much note of transgression, Job opens his mouth in empty talk. He multiplies words without knowledge. So Elihu made the case that the true punishment is the pit. Our righteousness or our wickedness is not going to change God. It's not going to sway him. It's not going to change who he is. It's not going to add to his goodness or take away from his goodness. All right. So, let's see. How far are we going to go here? Actually, we'll probably finish Elihu here, I think.
Yeah, might as well.
Yeah, all right. And Elihu continued and said, "Bear with me a little, and I will show you, for I have yet something to say on God's behalf. I will get my knowledge from afar and ascribe righteousness to my Maker," the thing that Job was not doing. He was ascribing injustice to God. "For truly my words are not false. One who is perfect in knowledge is with you. Behold, God is mighty and does not despise any. He is mighty in strength of understanding. He does not keep the wicked alive, but gives the afflicted their right. He does not withdraw his eyes from the righteous, but with kings on the throne he sets them forever, and they are exalted. And if they are found in chains and caught in the cords of affliction, then he declares to them their work and their transgressions, that they are behaving arrogantly. He opens their ears to instruction and commands that they return from iniquity. If they listen and serve him, they complete their days in prosperity and their years in pleasantness. But if they do not listen, they perish by the sword and die without knowledge. The godless in heart cherish anger. They do not cry for help when he binds them. They die in youth, and their life ends among the cult prostitutes. He delivers the afflicted by their affliction, and he opens their ear by adversity. He also allured you out of distress into a broad place where there was no cramping, and what was set on your table was full of fatness. But now you are full of the judgment of the wicked. Judgment and justice seize you. Beware lest wrath entice you into scoffing, and let not the greatness of the ransom turn you aside. Will your cry for help avail to keep you from distress, or the force of all your strength? Do not long for the night when peoples vanish in their place, because remember, Job was longing for death. Take care. Do not turn to iniquity, for you have chosen rather than affliction. Behold, God is exalted in his power. Who is a teacher like him? Who has prescribed for him his way? Or who can say, you have done no wrong? The point being, God uses affliction with the affliction of the righteous, of those who trust in him, to train them, so that they will wait patiently, so that they will continue to see their sins and trust in him for his goodness. The same thing cannot be said of the godless. They don't cry for help when he binds them, but the righteous do. It's the thing in the end that makes them righteous, because they turn to God for their help. They don't seek it in themselves. They don't seek it in their own character. And so when such affliction comes, we must remember that God is still just. God is not being wicked toward us. And we need to be patient and bear it, because he will bring good from it. There's no wrongdoing in God when he does this, even though sometimes the discipline can be quite severe. Remember to extol his work, of which men have sung. All mankind has looked on it. Man beholds it from afar. Behold, God is great, and he knows him not. The number of his years is unsearchable. For he draws up the drops of water. They distill his mist in rain. It's the water cycle here. Which the skies then pour down and drop on mankind abundantly. Can anyone understand the spreading of the clouds, the thunderings of his pavilion? Behold, he scatters his lightning about him and covers the roots of the sea. For by these he judges people, and he gives food in abundance. The same thunderstorm that can be a judgment on a people also waters the crops and brings forth life. He's doing that comparison there. The works of God, the majesty of God does both things. He covers his hand with the lightning and commands it to strike the mark. It crashes, declaring his presence. The cattle also declare that he rises. And he spooks the cattle and they start stampeding. Elijah continues, at this also my heart trembles and leaps out of its place. Keep listening to the thunder of his voice and the rumbling that comes from his mouth. Under the whole heaven he lets it go, and his lightning to the corners of the earth. After it his voice roars, he thunders with his majestic voice, and he does not restrain the lightnings when his voice is heard. God thunders wondrously with his voice. He does great things that we cannot comprehend. And so, what he's doing is he's teaching us to look beyond our own personal circumstance and look to the grandeur of God's works in all of nature. And God will pick up this theme when he starts speaking to Job. Because Job's problem is that now he has become so obsessed with his own suffering that he no longer can see God's goodness and God's majesty and his justice. And so Elihu is now extolling the wondrous works of God that he does throughout all the earth that we can't even comprehend. For to the snow, he says, fall on the earth, likewise to the downpour, his mighty downpour. He seals up the hand of every man, all men know he made, and all men whom he made, not the hand. He seals up the hand of every man, that all men whom he made may know it, Then the beasts go into their lairs and remain in their dens. From its chamber comes the whirlwind, and cold from the scattering winds. By the breath of God ice is given, and the broad waters are frozen fast. He loads the thick clouds with moisture. The clouds scatter his lightning. They turn around and around by his guidance to accomplish all that he commands them on the face of the habitable world. Whether for correction, or for his land, or for love, he causes it to happen. You see that to one person it is a storm, and to another person it brings the crops, and to another person it's a judgment on his enemies. God does all these things, and whatever the reason behind it, it is he alone who causes it to happen. We, of course, in our earthly wisdom, attribute all of this to mere random chance. That the hand of God is not behind something like weather. And since the age of the Enlightenment, where we've separated God utterly from the creation, and just simply because we have a scientific understanding of how the forces of the universe and the world work better than we ever have in the history of man, that's all fine and good, but it doesn't change a bit that God himself is the one who is at work in all these things. Being able to explain the mechanism by which he does it does not change his power. And if you think about how we get to a certain point in trying to explain the nature of the world, whichever science you care to name, right down to subatomic particles, nobody can answer the question, but why is it this way? Why does it work this way? Where do the laws come from? They have no answer. They reach the end. And Elihu answers that at the beginning. He says, if God would withdraw, you're right, all those laws would cease. He is the source of them. He is the one who causes the nature of the world, and even of every scientific theorem and interaction we can observe and formulate. He's the source of them. He doesn't judge us for examining in detail how these things work. That's good and fine. But no matter how far we go, we never get the answer to why are these things the way they are? Why does the universe exist at all? All right, a little side trail. Hear this, O Job. Stop and consider the wondrous works of God. Do you know how God lays his command upon them and causes the lightning of his cloud to shine? Do you know? Oh, we may be able to take the explanation a step further, but we end up in the same place as Job, and we have to say, no, I don't know. Do you know the balancings of the clouds? How the clouds hover. The wondrous works of him who is perfect in knowledge. You whose garments are hot when the earth is still because of the south wind. Can you, like him, spread out the skies hard as a cast metal mirror? Tell us what we shall say to him, or teach us what we shall say to him. We cannot draw up our case because of darkness. Shall it be told him what I would speak? Did a man ever wish he would be swallowed up? All right, so again, before you speak of how God is being unjust to you, consider all the works of God. See his wondrous works. Can you understand one of them, even the ones that your eyes can see? Tell us now, what are we going to say to God when we draw up our case because of darkness, because we can't see or understand what is going on? All right. Did a man ever wish that he would be swallowed up? I'm not sure what that's referring to there. And now, no one looks on the light when it is bright in the skies, when the wind has passed and cleared them. Out of the north comes golden splendor, and God is clothed with awesome majesty. The Almighty, we cannot find him. He is great in power, justice, and abundant righteousness he will not violate. Therefore men fear him. He does not regard any who are wise in their own conceit, in their own hearts. All right. So this is Elihu's answer, and now we're quickly nearing the end. We get God's response. And God basically carries forward Elihu's basic argument for him. Okay, next time, chapter 38.